So we have a couple of speakers here that are in the commercial realm of real estate. And I've known Derek now for, I don't know how many, almost a year? Almost a year. In 2017, Derek started with Toll's Development Company, where he assisted in office, retail, and industrial leasing and transactions. His experience with Toll's development led him to commercial brokerage in 2018. Dan Oster, who will also be presenting today. After spending 8 years managing corporate information systems, Dan entered the commercial real estate field in 2004, specializing in the sale and leasing of industrial properties. Dan has participated in the sales and leasing of a wide variety of industrial and office properties and land in Northern Nevada. And I'm sure they're going to expand on that. So without further ado, Derek and Dan, you want to come on up?
Thank you, Ginger.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. Sit down.
Yes.
My name is Derek Carroll. Like Ginger said, my career started in intern for Toll's Development Company. Toll's, if anyone knows, he's a local developer here. They're super active. They're actually the ones building these warehouses just across the street over on Airway. So that was I interned them for a few years, and then actually Dan was one of their agents. So that's how I got to meet Dan, and now we're partners, and now we sell commercial real estate to him. So he was the one that taught me the business.
So my name's Dan Oster, like a toaster. I only mentioned that I was in corporate IT because in that process, I learned to solve problems. And I think that's probably the one thing every one of us in this room shares, right? Is at some point, to be a successful real estate investor, you're solving problems. And I think
more in the case of property managers.
you're dealing with BS. No, I was also gonna say the real reason I'm here is much like this young lady. I heard there were going to be s'mores, and so. Established that we might know something about what we're talking about after 20 years. I'm the last original founding partner in NAI Alliance. I've been the broker of record for 15 years for them. We've done over $75 billion in transactions, 5,000 of them. I personally am in the game myself. I've done one investment residential property. I currently own about 400 acres of land that are in various stages of development. Have done own office buildings, own industrial buildings. You all say commercial. Commercial to us means, that's the umbrella statement. And then within that, there's retail, office, industrial, multifamily, and land. Some overlap, obviously, on land. There's also investment. As time's gone on in my career, I've gone from doing only industrial to then doing kind of office, land development, investment sale kind of stuff. And so I've had a wide variety of experience. I made the terrible mistake of crossing over and operating one of the businesses that made my land more valuable. I took over a golf course 5 years ago, and much like property management, except for I'm giving them keys to a vehicle with alcohol. Terrible idea, right? So I've had that experience and can kind of talk, with some degree of experience from land entitlement through the investment sale of a property. I also taught in the MBA program at the University of Nevada for 14 years. So I've taught a lot of hours of classroom stuff with really smart people, much smarter than myself. And I learned long ago, the more you talk, the more you ask questions, the more value we get out of tonight. And it's clear that this is a group with a lot of experience in it. So we're going to run through this material and then hopefully have a nice long Q&A session. And unless it's about the fabulous Mrs. Oster, no holds barred, we'll do our best to answer whatever you want. Fair enough? All right, take it away, Derek.
Right on. So yeah, this presentation is really just regarding commercial and what makes Reno unique as a whole. So we're gonna run through real quick tax advantages. Obviously, Nevada is kind of notorious for being really good as far as the tax advantages. You guys probably have heard that before. Reno and Nevada as a whole is really land constrained. So we'll go into a little bit of that. Reno is fast growing. I'm sure you guys obviously know, just living here, the traffic is growing, and our experience is mainly in industrial. So that's what we're going to touch on mostly as far as the product types that Dan had mentioned. So we'll jump into that later on. So this is what you guys are used to seeing. Probably you guys have seen that Nevada as a whole has no corporate income tax, no corporate shares tax, no corporate personal income tax, franchise, unitary, inventory. The list goes on. So this is what you guys are probably used to seeing. I think I'm going to let Dan jump in and talk about his experience and what kind of role the taxes play in groups' decisions to move to Nevada based on the taxes.
Right, so those items that Derek highlighted, that's really just encompassed in these 3 lines right here. This is an actual project that we worked on behalf of a 500-year-old Japanese company that came to Northern Nevada to open a large food distribution center. They ended up choosing another location, broke my heart, but that's, you don't win them all, but that's why I feel it's appropriate to share the analysis with you. But this is not an uncommon example of what the real advantage of real estate is in Nevada to a commercial user, okay? Whether it's, with the exception of probably multifamily, but anybody who's running the business in Nevada are gonna have advantages related to these items. This group looked at Reno, Phoenix, Salt Lake, Las Vegas, and the Bay Area Alt is what they called it. They were an existing Bay Area company. And, I don't want to go through every one of these items, but what I want to point out to here is these were 3 items that kind of related to tax. They considered 38 different criteria when they were comparing these locations. So while our tax advantage is significant and it's important, it is maybe a 0.5 percentage point of the decision criteria. And if you want to be successful in a commercial real estate context, you need to have a much broader understanding of what the advantages in this region are beyond just tax. I mean, we have a tax expert in the room who was smart enough to say, I'm done. I don't want to learn the rules anymore. They change all the time. Yes, we have a tax advantage, but that's not enough. For us, and hopefully the point that we're going to impress upon you today is that there's a lot more going for investment in commercial real estate in Northern Nevada than just the, hey, here's the 10 taxes we don't have, right? We put that on every single flyer. I don't think that's a new insight. We want to give you some new valuable insight tonight. One thing that I often stress to people is that yes, the price of leasing a property in Northern Nevada has gone up significantly in the last 5 years. Like the gentleman here, I lived through the 2008 crash, right? And saw it come down. We marked a really significant day when rates got back after about 9 years to where they had been pre-2008 crash. And in the years since then, it has continued to shoot through the roof, right? We've kind of topped off a little bit. We'll come back down. We'll get into that later. But as much as it has grown, lease prices have grown in Northern Nevada. When we compare ourselves to the rest of the Western states, we are still at or below the median cost for a like-kind property. People still come here because the real estate costs less. That's the takeaway from this slide.
So something that you guys may not have heard before, maybe you guys have, is that Nevada is land constrained. So what does that mean? So this is a map of Nevada. all the green is actually federally owned. So 87% of the land in Nevada is federally owned and cannot be held by private investors. The purple is the Indian Affairs, and then just the little specks of white are the ones that is the land that's available for private investors to hold. So it's kind of interesting. Maybe some of you guys haven't seen this map before, but it's really, really eye-opening. I know that I was really shocked when I saw the fact that you know, most of the land is not available to be privately held and developed. And then with what's available and what's left is Nevada is very mountainous. So it's actually the third mountainous state in all of the United States. That's something that was shocking to me as well. So obviously you cannot build on something that's over a 20% slope, or it costs a ton of money to be able to do so. So we're very limited in the options that we have, and we'll jump into the next slide.
Wait, if you'll go back to that for 1 second. Does anybody notice anything interesting about what land is available for private ownership?
80.
Yeah, so why is that why is this swath along 80? Why is that there? What's that? It's really not. It goes through the same up and down slope, but that's a good guess.
Railroad.
Okay, who said railroad? I'm giving you partial credit. Why did the railroad pick that path?
As flat as possible, least amount of uphill and downhill.
True, and why is that? What causes that route to be more flat than the alternatives?
Water.
It's water. Okay, someone up here said it. So really, when I get somebody in the car, and understand that when we get somebody in the car to look at a commercial property, we typically have 2 to 3 hours to show them somewhere between 4 and 8. If we go all day, we might show them 10 properties. Then they get on a plane, they leave again. I could count on one hand with the help of somebody else, because I'm not that good at counting. How many times I've had 2-day tours, right? We have to impress things on people very quickly. The slope issue is key. Most of why Northern Nevada is land constrained, or Nevada is land constrained, it's owned by the BLM. The feds don't want this land. The feds wish we would take it from them. The state will only take land through a private land act if it has a reasonable chance of generating tax, right? Property tax on it. Most of the places it's going to go is it's going to follow the river. If you ever want to read about the history of the region, I highly recommend Men to Match My Mountains. It's a great history of why at least Western culture inhabited or moved to this area. It was all about mining. It's all about jobs. I always ask people when they come here, did you come here for love or money? Right? You fall in love, you move, or you find a job and you move. But typically the person you love wants a job too. So it's all tied together, right? Throughout Nevada's history, people have been coming here for opportunity, and the same is true today as it was 150, 200 years ago. And they're gonna follow where the water went. The water, there's a path in here. Has anybody ever heard of the 40-mile desert? There were wagon train remnants left in the 40-mile desert, because what is that 40 miles between? Anybody? The Humboldt River is what makes this part of the crossing possible. And then the Truckee River system and the Carson River systems are what make this sort of area possible. Okay, but there's this stretch of 40 miles that you had to make it across. And a lot of people died trying to go in a wagon train across that 40 miles. We don't even think about it today, right? The most we think about is, should I get a big gulp before I go across that part of the road or not? But it was a big deal. This was the path that allowed Western migration to Sutter Creek in 1848. And then 1849, the 49ers were named after that period in California history. This was the most direct path to get there. So really, a lot of our land constraint has a geological tradition to it. The water went there, then the railroad went there, then the highway went there. And for the next generation, the fiber optic cable that runs the internet followed the same right of way across the highway systems and railroad systems. So I argue our future is dictated by the same geography. All right.
So this is basically the same map. We zoomed in a little bit just to show you, Reno is still limited, just as the rest of Nevada. So then obviously here's a map of Reno, McCarran's running right here. Most of this is developed. So you might be wondering, like, what were we left? We were left all this white area, and then all of this that's undeveloped, like we said before, is mountain ranges, the Virginia mountain ranges. So a lot of the land that has been bought has already been developed, and there's not a whole lot left for us to develop. So that's, I think, a huge reason why land prices, lease prices, everything's skyrocketing in Reno, and we're seeing it kind of firsthand today. Anything to add, Tom?
Yeah, and 20% is kind of a cost barrier. In the Truckee Meadows, you're not allowed to develop on more than 10% slope. We call it the hillside ordinance. And so where you might go to areas of California where it's gotten really valuable, the land, you'll see houses up the hillsides. We've actually limited how high up the hills we can go. So really you're constrained to the alluvial plains or the kind of foothills heading up to the ranges that you see. So, Reno does have that challenge. And once you find a piece of dirt, it still needs, the smartest guy I know in development always said, ask yourself, where does the poop go? Right? Because you can have a well, you can pull it out, but to do large scale development, you need to get sewer out. You need to be able to get waste out. You can bring power, you can do a lot of things, but that's the really expensive part, is figuring out how you get water on and off the site. We could do a whole 2 hours, by the way, on water rights. Yeah.
You go back one?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, where would you, maybe you're gonna get to this, but where would the next building be done?
Yeah, that is a great and really valuable question to ask. My card is right here. Having that understanding of where the next piece of available developable dirt is maybe the most important thing we work on. Right? And it's, a gentleman over here was like, hey, is somebody, we're looking for sellers who have a motivation to sell. And a lot of land speculators buy land, they hold it long-term, and they're waiting for the market cycle to be favorable enough for them to sell at a high number. Right? And so a big challenge of what we do is timing land purchase where you see an opportunity, but you can handle the 2-year window between when you commit to that piece, you design what you're going to do, you entitle it, or you permit it, you build it, you open it, and you tenant it. I mean, that's probably the single most valuable question people ask us. The other side that a lot of people don't think about, not only did Nevada say we don't have, personal income tax, corporate income tax, we're so hardcore about it, we passed it into the state constitution. Then we said you have to have a referendum to propose any tax increase. That takes 2 election cycles, but because those 2 are specifically included, that takes another 2 cycles to get a constitutional amendment. We reasonably cannot change the income tax structure in this state for 20 years. It's not changing. Government grows. How does the government grow and pay for itself? This is the secret that a lot of people don't realize. The single most significant hurdle to development in Northern Nevada, after you find this mysterious piece of land, are fees. Fees aren't taxes. There has been an ethos in the Nevada voter mindset that says people should pay fees for the things they want. User taxes. That's why when you buy a new vehicle and you're like, okay, I'm gonna stretch to make this payment. And then you go to DMV and you go, oh my God, I made a big mistake. That's $1,200 to register my new vehicle, right? That doesn't happen in other states. That's a sign of the fact where we have some of the most highway miles in the country and very few taxes to pay for road maintenance. Well, that results in very high registration fees. This is Story County, Douglas County, Lyon County, Washoe County. This would be unincorporated Washoe County. Within Washoe County, Reno and Sparks both have their own fee systems. And this is an example of what it would take to build a 250,000 square foot warehouse building, which used to seem big, but is now kind of a mid-range industrial building. All right. And at the end of the day, fees, extractions, licenses, they go by a lot of different names. This was prepared by the folks who really marketed the Tahoe Reno Industrial Center to point out that it only costs $140,000 in fees, taxes, and licenses to build that building in Story County. It could be as high as $840,000 in fees, taxes, and hookups to build the exact same building in Sparks. That's just fees, folks.
Wow.
That's building permits. That's traffic impact fees, sewer fees, water hookup fees. I mean, there's a whole, this one right here, RTC, the Regional Transportation Commission, they're building roads. The biggest single item is they want these people to pay their proportionate share to bring new roads to these areas. So this is one of those areas that everybody ever paid the dumb tax the first time you do anything. I pay the dumb tax twice because I'm not as smart as most people. Most people have to pay it once. But this is something that catches people on the dumb tax. The first time you try to do something and you find out all of a sudden the region is not just one homogeneous set of fees. It really matters what county, what city, what municipality you have.
So who here did not grow up in Reno? Cool. All right, I'm not the only one. People call me a transplant. I think it's catching on. But it's true. There's tons of people that are moving here from out of state. A lot of people from California, but from elsewhere. And I think word is finally getting out that Reno is a beautiful and perfect place to live. The quality of life is great. So this article was released in 2020. And then just recently, we were rated, one of the top happiest place to live in America. So word is finally getting out, traffic is coming, and things, it's interesting, obviously, but it's a huge reason why real estate costs are being shot up in Reno, because people are finally realizing that this is a place that they should move. So growth is happening, and that's a huge market factor for commercial in Reno, Nevada. So just supporting what we were just talking about. So population, and I'll let Dan elaborate on this, but I believe that 500,000 people in population is a huge threshold for cities to pass. So once that passes, there's a lot of things that end up happening past that. I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, so a lot of real estate investment dollars ask the question, is it a primary, a secondary, or a tertiary market? And the question is kind of weird. And it took me a long time to figure out, what are you really asking me, right? When we climbed above 500,000 square feet, or 500,000 people, we qualified as by some people's standards, we went from being a tertiary, a third tier market to a second tier market. Some people say you got to cross 1 million to become a second tier. But what does that mean to us? Does anybody have a guess on why that's significant?
Opportunity.
It does change opportunity. That's part of the answer, certainly, but a little deeper. Anybody?
It's a pull for larger companies.
It is a pull for larger companies, right? I showed you the criteria that a company picked by. Population was one of those items. The sense is that if you have a 3% unemployment rate in a city of 1 million people, is preferable to having a 3% unemployment rate in a town of 200,000, right? You're gonna find workers in a larger city much easier. That's true, but there's another really big item here that relates to the opportunity part of this.
Economic growth.
Economic growth, certainly there's a network effect.
Taxes,
Well, we keep going back to taxes.
more tax dollars.
As best as I could find, there was always 11 approved investment categories for publicly traded funds, publicly traded capital. Real estate, about a decade and a half, 10, 15 years ago, became the 12th investment class that allowed public investment in real estate. It's a sector of investment. So that's when you get REITs, real estate investment trusts. It allowed people to, instead of do what we all do, which is use our own dollars to buy real estate, as best as I can tell, by listening to everybody in this room, I'm in that same category with you. It allowed a new class of investor to come into the game. And it has profoundly changed industrial real estate in Reno, Nevada in the last 10 years. Okay. The challenge is when we look at a cap rate, right? The relationship between the rent and how much you're willing to pay for it. We'll talk about that later if you want to dive into that. A significant factor in that is your cost of capital. And when somebody's raising capital off of a publicly traded source, like a REIT, their cost of capital is lower and they get a lot more of it. And it ends up, they can pay a lower cap rate, which means a higher price for the same rental stream. They win more deals. Okay, so the fact that our population is growing is most important. This is our key insight for you tonight. It's most relevant and it's most important to us here is because as we cross this threshold and we start to have more public dollars, investment dollars coming into this market, we see it in a variety of ways. Tesla, only possible because they raised money off of the public markets. But Redwood Materials, who took 1.8 million square feet and is out looking for more right now, they also did a public raise of dollars. But the one that really kills us, has everybody ever heard of Blackstone?
Yes.
Blackstone has had 5 different entities that have bought and sold the single largest industrial portfolio in Northern Nevada over the last 10 years, and they kept selling to themselves. It started in 08. They would just recapitalize. Every time they did, they'd raise another pool of money. They pushed rents. And they were enough of a market maker that they could really influence rents here. And that's only made possible because we've crossed these employment thresholds. That was what I was trying to explain this to him in the office. He was like, you can just.
Perfect. So here is familiar with the Tahoe Reno Industrial Center. Cool. So yeah, this is obviously the yellow map. So this is the Tahoe, call it trick. So this is where a lot of that development is going into in regards to industrial. So kind of the background of where industrial started. So so in Sparks, kind of in like right along the railroad is where the old kind of older Sparks industrial buildings were built. So I think in the early 50s is when that started. And obviously, like we said, we're land constrained. So it's just kept building out and out and out. And we finally have ran out of land. And that's where a lot of that development and for the big box industrial stuff is going.
I love this map. I love this visual because it gives you some context for the fact that this is, this is now, it started in 1999. A gentleman named Roger Norman, on the heels of the success that he got right here. He bought the 3,000 acre Wilbur May ranch. And Wilbur May, who used to own the May department stores, Wilbur May, his cattle brand was 2 Diamonds. That's why there's Double Diamond and Double Eagle and all these doubles, right? It was all based, this whole area used to be his 3,000 acre ranch. Roger Norman came in and he planned a 25-year sales cycle to sell out that entire ranch. He sold out in 14 years. That was the 90s. At the end of that period, he came out and bought a 103,000 acre McCarran ranch, right? That had been entitled to do industrial. And notice how weird this line is. Anybody guess why that line is what it is?
Counties.
Countywide.
It's Story County. And what they did that was completely unique is they, much like we did with taxes into the Nevada Constitution, they put their development handbook into Story County Development Code. And they said it can never be changed. There are spelling errors from the original version of it that are still in there they cannot correct. And when they talk to companies, they say, you move in here, these rules are not going to change on it. And one of the most significant ones is they do not allow residential development in here. You cannot build an apartment. You cannot build a house. It's like in California, they have the city of industry. It is a municipality completely designed to avoid the cost of developing residential real estate. Does anybody know the county seat of Story County? It's Virginia City. Virginia City is not in Tripp. And those folks are benefiting greatly from the fact, one of the truisms is that from a services standpoint, property tax on commercial property is a net gain for a county, and property tax on a residential unit is a net loss because they have to provide so many more services for a residential user. So all these Virginia City folks are kind of drafting off of the commercial property tax that's being paid in the Tahoe Reno Industrial Center. And I can tell you, I represented a chemical company that was third generation in downtown Seattle. The guy came in and said, I'm buying this $8 million property. I'm going to put a $45 million tenant improvement into it to create chemicals for the electronics industry. I'm the first new chemical plant made in the United States in 25 years. And I'm doing it because all these people moved next to me in Seattle and started complaining about my business operations. The minute we told him no people could ever live in there, he goes, that's where we're going. And invested millions, 150 chemical engineering jobs. Great news for Northern Nevada, massive loss for, Seattle. Next.
That kind of sucks though, because it commutes. There's all the jobs, but then no housing. So people are commuting in and making the rest of the traffic this much worse.
Well, and then you saw what the RTC fee is, right? Story County is not part of RTC, Regional Transportation Commission. They are happy to collect all these taxes, but they're not contributing to the fact that, oh, hey, I'm going to be in a warehouse job out in Tahoe Reno Industrial Center. I'm going to work at Tesla. Oh, but I'm probably going to have family, and I kind of like having my kids educated. They're going to go to a public school. That's one of the great advantages of Nevada. And by the way, whenever you see a statistic that says we're 49th or 50th in the United States in education, that is because they will not let us report education statistics separate from Vegas. Northern Nevada, Washoe County, every county in Northern Nevada is at or above every measure, at or above average for every measure of public education. One of the main things we tell people when they come in from the East Coast is, I send my own kids to public school, you can send your kids there. We have a great public school system, right?
So a lot of the times when we have groups coming from out of town, or if we have industrial users from that are actually currently in Reno, we ask, one of the first questions we ask is location. Each of these Reno submarkets, so these are all of the breakdowns for the submarkets in Reno. Some of you guys may be familiar that we stare at this map constantly. So a lot of our conversation is around this. So East Valley is Trick, what we just talked about. Lots of development going on out there. So Sparks kind of includes Spanish Springs. But a lot of the majority of the Sparks submarket is right here, right inside that McCarran Loop. And that's a lot of that old Sparks industrial that we talked about before. And what we're also seeing a lot of development in industrial is the bounds. And the reason is because obviously 395 goes up there, so it's an easy access point. And there's a ton of labor in the North Valleys. There's a lot of that blue collar crowd that lives out there, you know, cheaper housing. So a lot of warehouses that go up there. A lot of the times this is a little bit more attractive than Trick because there's not that commute, and a lot of the people's employees live closer to that. West Reno is a much smaller industrial market. We'll see a lot more housing and you know, a little bit of industrial buildings being built out there. If you guys drive 80 and you guys are going to, you know, ski or whatever, you guys see some of those big boxes going over there. I think we're pretty much tapped out in West Reno. Central Airport is a lot of the older buildings, so they kind of started in Sparks and then flooded into Central Airport. So a lot of the land out there is saturated and is developed. And then South Reno, we'll probably see the highest prices in South Reno just based on leasing costs.
Do you see big difference in like asset classes by submarket? Like, is there any patterns?
Absolutely. So to Derek's point, West Reno, the little bit of industrial that's there is some of the oldest stuff. Some of it's block. I mean, it predates the 1950 concrete tilt-up revolution. By the way, Reno, Nevada was one of the first places in the country that did concrete tilt-up construction. All right. So right along the I-80 corridor, that's the older stuff. This was really 80s and 90s, the Central Airport. So you'll see along Longley Lane north of here, that kind of east side of the airport. That used to be the border of town, right? Especially now that we have the Southeast connector that kind of goes from here to here. This is much more infill, right? The challenge is, I always tell people, you have to imagine the Truckee Meadows Valley as a bathtub, and the drain at the bottom of the bathtub is where 80 leaves in Sparks. That's the lowest point. The closer you get to that point, the higher the probability of flooding, but 80 acts as a levee. So we don't get flooding at this low point here. It all kind of congregates in here. So you'll see the last bit, and unfortunately for the University of Nevada, right, they have a huge holding of agricultural land here. The University of Nevada system of higher education, NG, has thousands and thousands of acres of land that's been given to them over time. Very little of it's actually eligible for commercial development. But everybody has this emotional attachment. Like, oh, the university should never get rid of land. There's a little bit of land right on McCarran right there that they just built that 1 million square foot Ames deal on. There's a couple of pieces on there that we were hoping could be developed. I have a disabled sister and she might call 5 or 6 times, but let me just turn that off, but I love her to death. So this area is highly prone to flooding. There's the Living River Plan, which is set to address a lot of that stuff. So maybe in another 10 or 15 years, some of this land will be able to come back into development. That's a long-term hold strategy. I think the best part of Derek including this slide, though, is to understand, whoever asked that question, super insightful. Product type really matters in what submarket you are. I always tell people North Valleys, I have never seen an industrial property that has units under 10,000 square feet out there succeed. If the owner of the company is in the car and they want to, and most of the time in a 10,000 square foot or smaller industrial space, the owner of the company goes to work in that building every day, they don't want to go out there. Unless it's 25,000 square foot unit size or larger, I would say don't go to North Valleys. That's an insight that you get kind of knowing what submarket can attract what. And Derek's point was really good. If you have a business that needs 200,000 square feet and you need 200, 250 employees, you better go to North Valleys. We took a company that was in 200,000 square feet in the North Valleys, put it in 800,000 square feet in Tahoe Reno Industrial Center, a name brand company the same position, same person, same position, they had to pay him $2 an hour more to drive out there every day. Or else I said, we're leaving, we'll stay with the company in town. I'm not gonna, spend this on gas and vehicle and all that.
So Reno Industrial really started like I said before, in that Sparks market, there's 20,000 and below square feet warehouse units, and a lot of that consisted of users that were local, right? So companies that were local, and Reno wasn't really on the map as far as the bigger companies like Amazon and some of the names that you guys see up here. So in the past 5-10 years, Reno has really, I think the word has got out that we're really a logistics hub, if you will. So what this map shows is this red line. So obviously you got Reno, and then we got all the states here. So one-day truck service is this red line. So within one-day truck service, Reno is able to fulfill 75 million people, or I guess population that's surrounding. So really the huge take home here is that we're able to have, obviously the tax advantages, we're able to stay out of California, our fees are low, but we're really logistically kind of dumb luck how it all worked out. But Reno is a very has the highest square footage of industrial per capita. So when you look at the number of people versus the square footage of industrial we are very, very saturated as far as that goes because of these logistical reasons. So within the one-day truck service, 75 million people, and then up close to 100 million people for two-day truck service. So logistically, there's huge users coming to Reno for the reason of being able to service. You can reach Seattle within one-day shipping, and you can also reach San Diego within one-day shipping. So there's massive companies that are moving, million square feet out of California from other areas, and so that's what makes industrial and kind of our location as far as Reno goes really, really unique.
There's something in supply chain management called the square root law of inventory. Every time a business adds a second distribution point, it has an exponential or a doubling of their cost of inventory. And the three biggest costs in a warehouse: the inventory itself, makes sense, it's a room full of boxes full of your inventory. Labor to move those boxes around, and transportation to get that inventory in and out of that, right? Real estate's not even the top, is like 5% of their cost on average. This slide is significant because if you only have one location in the Western United States to hit 75 million people, you're not doubling your cost for each facility. It's a very convenient way for someone to enter the West Coast market and have a presence. Back, not a lot of people know, we were the second node in Amazon's supply chain network starting back in 1995. They moved to Fernley. Amazon's success was built in large part by this transportation advantage in order to.
So this slide tells a really interesting story, and it goes all the way back to the year 2000. So you got the timeline down here, and then on this left side is measuring these blue bars. And what these numbers are measuring is the total amount of square footage of industrial space in the Northern Nevada market. So we've got Fernley in there, all of the submarkets that we just talked about. So the total square footage you can see in 2000 was close to 60,000. In 2023, we've doubled what we had square footage wise in regards to warehouse space and specifically. And this line tells a unique story because this line shows vacancy. So what supply was available at that given time. So you guys can see over on the right there's the percentages. So 8% vacancy all the way in 2000. We kind of run that ride. You can see the 2006 crash. Vacancy shot up because their business wasn't booming as well. So a lot more space was available during that time. Since then, we have absorbed all of the new construction as far as warehousing goes in the Northern Nevada market. So this this is really significant because no matter how fast we build, we really can't build fast enough because of all of the demand that we've had and you know, like for the reasons that we said before, tax advantages and just a really unique logistical spot for big logistics companies to come over.
And I can tell you, I entered the industry right here. About 60 million square feet. I started as a research analyst. And for years, we said an 8% vacancy mark, 8% vacancy is a balanced market. That means owners and tenants have equal power. You get above 8% vacancy, okay, the tenant can start calling the shots, getting concessions. Below that, you know, the landlords have the advantage. Look what's happened since this came up. It's just been this steady downhill thing. Yes, in the last year, we've ticked up, but at this point in time, we had nothing to show people. Dream clients would come to town and go, I need 1 million square feet. 1 million square foot lease as a broker makes your career, right? And then you have to call and be like, we have nothing. Every building that could be built is under construction right now. Get in line for something that will be delivered in 12 months. So a lot of novice real estate investors call us and go, I'd like to get into commercial, and I think investment in industrial is a good idea. And I go, get in line. That the secret's out. He said it nice. I'll say it direct. The secret's out. If you don't have some advantage or some secret or some motivated seller for why you can go in and fix a problem, you're not even gonna get there. Right? So what does that leave? Retail and office buildings. By the way, the only vacancy that's lower than industrial is multifamily. So if you're gonna try to go into that asset category, you better put your boxing gloves on. And you better be able to add what I like to call lift in your investment. What is the lift on an investment? Can anybody give me an example?
Oh, sorry
You
about
kind
that.
of hinted at it, by the way. You provided a kind of lift in your presentation. What's the lift you offer?
So
Find me a seller who can't sell it to someone else, who needs a quick close. You know, having an all cash or an alternative financing method from a typical buyer, that can be lift. I can come in and close quick, I can fix your problem. That's a form of lift. So it could be in your financing. What else could be a form of lift? I got a property manager in the room. What's the advantage you offer?
Well. Okay, so what we offer is basically just income where we do all work.
Right, quality management. We're gonna take care of that asset.
Yep.
What's another form of lift in a transaction?
ability to fill a vacancy.
Vacancy. Right? Say it all the time. Full buildings are worth more than empty buildings. And if you're willing to take that vacancy risk on, tenant the building, you've created lift. One that a lot of people, as soon as I write it, will understand. What do I mean by value add?
Something that you can add to, like, in residential, it's adding a bathroom.
Yeah, I can take a pig and put lipstick on like nobody's business. Right? You might be great with taxes. You might be great at understanding. All I believe about a real estate investor is you need to understand what lift you can bring to a deal. What is your strong point? Somebody kept saying, hey, I invest in Reno, Nevada. And that's my brother up there. Why? Because I have an information advantage here. I don't know anything about I don't know anything about Ohio, other than LeBron's from there, right? But if you know something about Ohio, great. If that's your advantage, you got to be looking for your form of lift. A gentleman, we walked in and was talking to him. He goes, hey, my first couple deals, I used all my own money. But now I've learned a thing or two, right? Your lift is quality management, right? You can ask for a different kind of term because you've done it a couple times, you have some insight, this isn't your first rodeo. So I would just recommend. You really ask yourself, what is my lift that I can bring to it? Because you gotta have an advantage, because the market's smart. There used to be. An information advantage. You know, anybody here who has their license knows, like, hey, I'm in the business all day. I hear about people who need houses that can't find it. I see that one and I go, hey, I've looked at enough houses to know someone's gonna grab that one. Or, hey, that might look good on paper. It's a paper tiger though, because it's next to, I went to Eagle Valley Junior High in Carson City, and it was next to the sewer plant. No one lived next to it because a couple hours of the week it didn't smell so good. On paper, the house looked good. But if you didn't live here, you didn't know. Right? This information advantage, when I was watching the Super Bowl, homes.com. Anybody see those ads? What's their new logo? What's their tagline? Anybody notice that? We did your homework for you.
Yeah.
I would tell you that in the 20 years of my career, the information advantage that as a broker I used to have has eroded. Much more so in residential and multifamily than it has in commercial, and specifically within industrial. But I still feel the pinch. So I have to find other forms of lift. You know, beyond just an information advantage. That's our prepared remarks, guys. We wanted to leave some room, a good chunk of the room at the end, to answer any questions you guys have about the commercial side. Yeah.
So in terms of these lift categories, can you talk about, I guess, like what you're seeing as people differentiating themselves the most, right? Are there sections here that you're seeing people like crush because they can do one of these things way better than other people?
That guy's got one of the really good. Tell him about DC construction.
Oh, wait, sorry, I was doing it now. Can you just repeat that?
Yeah, so I'm just wondering about like these lift categories.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Like, is there an example in one of these categories where someone is just crushing because they have a specific advantage in that category?
Yeah, so I guess what you can bring to the table, right? So like a lot of we work with user, or I guess developers all the time who buy properties, right? And Alex Oster, for example, he puts lipstick on a pig like no other. That's kind of his motto. He takes buildings with really good bones that look really, really crappy and don't show well, and he buys them, and he does a really, really good job at kind of remodeling those. And guess what? He owns a construction company. So that's what he brings to the table, and that's why he's a perfect example of kind of what you're talking about. Yeah, my goal as a broker is to be able to help people with that tenant improvement side. So I started a side construction company. I have a background in construction. So if we have users that come over, or I guess investors that want to see, or I guess jump into a project, that's something that we're able to help them with, is not just finding them a location, but also, hey, I know a little bit about X, Y, and Z as far as the construction goes. So I'm sure you owning a couple of residential projects, you've probably learned tons about the lift and what it takes to make a property look better and be worth more.
Totally, especially value added.
Yeah,
That's the margin of safety for every deal, right? For me, anyways.
Yeah.
One of the things that, we've, I guess, enjoyed is finding opportunities at market bottoms. And looking at a sub 2% vacancy rate in industrial, and a continuing all-time high as far as market growth goes. I mean, are you guys? To me, that doesn't scream, hey, I should go build a tilt up and, in 24 months, hope that I've got someone to fill, 500,000 square feet. Personally, as an investor. I mean, what do you guys see who have the sort of fingers on the pulse? I mean, what are you guys seeing as far as opportunities in and around that market? Not necessarily specifically the tilt up warehouse space, but just the outside, maybe the redheaded stepchildren or the things people don't necessarily like to look at as often.
So I'll take this one. So I like to say not every rut has a diamond in it. Not every old car is worth fixing up and putting in August times. But having been on literally thousands of tenant tours in my career, looked at thousands of buildings with people, probably tens of thousands, I just have a sense of like, someone's gonna like that, they're not gonna like that. One of the things that I always look at, I've watched a million guys say, oh, we really like this building, the cost is right, blah, blah, blah. And it's typically a woman who's with them, who is a decision influencer. And if they walk into the bathrooms and they don't want to pee there, they don't ever lease or buy that building. The guy he's talking about, Alex Hose, he taught us. The first thing he does is goes in and makes the bathroom spotless. I have a big showing at one of my own properties Friday. I called the manager and I said, they're coming in Friday. I don't care what it takes. The bathrooms better be clean. Right? So having that sort of insight into what's a property worth fixing up and what is it people will tolerate? What is it that influences people's actual decision that comes with the wisdom of having done deals? You know, the bathroom thing, I just use an example because most people get it, but there's certain things like I would never build an industrial door and save 5% on the door by going with only a 12-foot door instead of a 14-foot door. I've just watched it clear too many deals. Right? There's just things you learn that you just wouldn't do, and that's the basket of things that allow, I think, the lift that I have when I'm working with somebody is that. The other thing I'll tell you is I told this to a client today. He bought a property, he got a low ball offer. The first thing he did is he goes, I'm not even gonna respond on price. I'm gonna cut down their timeline. I'm gonna do this. I'll tell you this, I'm cutting the fee. And I just said, hey, I'll present whatever you tell me to present. I'm legally obliged. But if you start by squeezing the brokers and you think you're gonna ever get another deal in this town at a better rate, I think you're cutting off your nose to spite your face. Like, pay your brokers. They're the ones who bring in your tenants. Those are just a couple of things that the rules I lost your question. I'm sorry.
So yeah, you were talking about new construction, right? Like why would you go? Yeah, okay.
You guys are kind of narrowed in on the industrial, you know, warehouse.
I've gone to office. He's now 100% industrial.
Okay.
I still work with people I've always worked with, but I've kind of turned my focus on office because we're at 12% vacancy.
Because that's for me, that's the.
Yeah, and there's a lot more opportunity there. I think something interesting, or I guess what I want to point out about your question is, so 1 year ago, so this is vacancy, it's kind of hard to read. So vacancy up here, so 1 year ago, 0.89. And then this quarter, so Q3 of 2024, or sorry, 2023 Q4, was a huge jump. So that's a 4% jump. That's massive. But like Dan said before, an even market is still 8% vacancy. So who's still got the power right now? Landlords. And what's really, really interesting too is that construction hasn't stopped at all. 8 million square feet of construction is underway still. That's 7% of our market. So we're still delivering, and there's still, and most of those developers are local development companies. McKenzie Construction, for example, is the most active. So they probably, you know, they're the ones that know the grounds. They're actually the most aggressive. So they're still putting bets on Reno as far as being very, very aggressive as far as delivering supply to the market and you know, betting on the fact that demand will still be there at the end.
How much of that 4% do you think is new construction?
Good question. What's being built right now is stuff that's actually already been pre-leased. So for the most part, and not in all cases. So the newer stuff is the stuff that people want to lease. So I guess the story that we're telling right now is a lot of the big boxes that are being built out in Trick and North Valleys. The big users are coming and taking those, and that's actually where the demand lies, is big corporations coming in, so your Amazon, your On Track, your big distribution companies. Where that 4% vacancy is coming from is a lot of the local guys. I hate to say it, but it's a lot of the 20 to 50s. If we send a list right now to people for who want industrial space within the 20 to 80,000 square foot range, that list is actually really, really long. And I'd say a year ago, right around this time, that list used to have 2 properties on it. So a lot of the local mom and pop shops are actually, just because rent has doubled on them, in some cases has tripled, a lot of that is where that vacancy is coming from, in my opinion.
What are you seeing with regards to financing for, let's say, industrial? Local banks, regional banks,
So I deal with this a lot on investment property as well as owner occupied stuff. I used to tell a joke back in 2008 that a banker right now is a lot like a lawnmower without the blade. Sure, it makes a lot of noise, but it doesn't do what it was designed to do. Banks right now are in a really difficult position. They have all this money sitting in their reserves and they can earn a return on it. And yet if they go out and lend it right now, there's a really high risk that someone's either going to default, or as soon as rates go down, they're just going to refinance it. So they'll never get the yield, they'll never get any return on the loans they do right. So to answer your question specifically, banks right now are harder to work with than they ever used to. Right? We used to say hard money for alternative financing. Now it's almost we either prefer all cash, or someone goes, hey, I've lined up a family office or an insurance company and I already got my money lined up, or I'm sitting on a $4 billion REIT and we raised the money already. Those people are the ones getting the deals. It's not typically somebody who's coming in and going, I'm using a bank to do an SBA loan. I did an SBA loan at the end of last year. The bank missed the closing deadline 11 times. Oh. I mean, we were down to like, we'll get one more day. And the seller was just like pulling her hair out. She had the RV loaded, was ready to retire. When am I going to get my money? And I said, listen, blow these guys out. The market started to drop. You're not going to get the same number from the next person. So she put up with it. Finally, they closed. So what am I seeing from banks right now? 80% loan to value is high. That's if you're on deposit with them and you're a good risk and we know you and we see you want to borrow $1 million, well, you better have $1 million on deposit. 65% loan to value is more like, okay, we'll compete, and it's 7.5% to 8%. And they'll do a 20-year AM with a 5-year balloon payment. So they'll amortize over that time, but you're going to refinance in 5 years. That's what I'm seeing. Yeah.
Are you seeing those challenges change the buyers that you're seeing? So like you mentioned cash, right?
Mm-hmm.
Does that mean there's an influx of syndications coming into the market buying some of this stuff, like other groups?
From my point of view, residential investment is a lot more like babysitting toddlers. Oh my gosh, this goes up, this goes down, blah, blah, blah. I ran out of money, I loaned too much, blah, 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 blah. Wow, they're all over the place, right? Keep in mind, most commercial owners, you don't get to a point in life where you own commercial property if it's your first deal, right? Those people tend to have staying power, right? And I noticed after 2008, it wasn't until 11 or 12 that we started to see desperate sellers. Banks right now, everybody's going, oh, all of these like 5-year balloons are coming up in the office property ownership. Look, the banks know that they probably have the best owner already signed up, and they're going to be able to work. They're going to work with them. We used to have this saying, performing but not conforming. Right? They're not going to foreclose on somebody who's still paying their mortgage, even if the loan covenant said they had to refi at this point in time and they could never be below 80% occupancy. It's just, they know, a lot of these bankers have lived through it. Like, oh, we start to foreclose on people, now we exacerbate the problem and the market can turn pretty quick. So if your strategy is, I'm gonna find a commercial owner who's bleeding, and that's the person I'm gonna get a deal from. I don't know that there's enough volume. Keep in mind, in the last 5 years, their rents have doubled, if not tripled. From when they bought it. They're probably gonna be okay. Yeah.
As you see people come into the let's just say office market, you know, or who are in it, you know, looking at commercial properties, either current owners or future owners. Are you seeing a lot of concern about cap rate? I mean, vacancy is what it is around here. It's kind of property dependent in my experience. So are you seeing things move?
Yeah.
Go and at what ballpark, you know, cap rate are you seeing things move on the market now?
Yeah, so, you know, a 7% cap rate is the long-term historical average. I remember the first time I sold something below a 7 cap, I was like, wow. Below a 6 cap, I was like, oh my gosh, that must be like diamond credit. Now, those deals in 22, we were seeing pre-leased industrial buildings where they'd signed a lease on a building wasn't even built yet, trading at a 2.5, 3 cap. I just closed a transaction at a 6.5 cap on a small office building on Long Lane. I now in my head, when I do my own math on is this a good deal or not, I use a 6.5 cap. I used a 6 cap for the last couple of years. I even got to a 5 cap. Now I'm back to a 6.5 cap. I don't think I'm gonna have to go to 7. Kind of on my market average. Okay, are you guys ready for my big close?
Fireworks,
I want to remind you of something. By all realistic measures, we live in the greatest time in human history. We pay less for food. We have less violence. We get to keep what we earn. We have property rights. Right? We have the longest lives people on this planet have ever had. And we have medicines for our ailments. Not only do we live longer, we live well longer. And with no disrespect to anybody else, the United States is not perfect, but I'll tell you, this is the best country in the world. I lived in Africa and I learned that at 18. This is a great place to live. Within this country, Nevada is fast growing city. I don't know if you've been to Vegas in the summer, but I'll stay in northern Nevada. So from my point of view, we live in the greatest time in human history, in the greatest country in the world, in the best city in the country. And other people seem to agree with me. So whatever it is you choose to stretch and buy, I think you're going to be okay in 3 to 5 years. Right? If you have too short of a horizon on real estate, this is not your business. House flippers drive me crazy. The people who go value investment, this thing makes sense to me, and I'll sell it on the day it makes sense to sell it, not on the day I have to sell it because I stretch too far. If you're investing that way, I think you're going to place your money here pretty well. I'm kind of curious about what's going on in Ohio because I heard that a couple times, but I'm still going to bet on Reno, Nevada with my own dollars. What's your big close?
I got nothing. I can't follow that. What are you talking about? So, well, actually, real quickly, so this is just a little snapshot of our quarterly report. So we actually released this to a group of investors, you know, tenants in the market. So all we need is your guys' emails if you guys were interested in getting that quarterly. It is industrial focused. I'm sure you know, Dan can get you on his list to get into the investment side of things. But if you guys want, you know, we're really reachable. I really appreciate you guys giving us the time today to talk about, you know, we always joke, we know a lot about a little small sliver, and that's industrial, and in his case, investment, sales and leasing in Reno, Nevada. So we pride ourselves in being experts. So we really appreciate you guys' time today. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to talk to us after. I think we gotta get out of here.
Oh, we got one more good question. Just gonna close the door.
You knew it was a good one too.
I did.
Office, you're into office, high vacancy, are you looking at repurposing those? Are you?
Look, there are a few, that conversion from office to multifamily, great on paper. I heard the American Institute of Architects talk about, that's actually the divine standard they're gonna recommend going forward. Is that they create multi-story buildings in city cores that could go either way. Every time I've tried to underwrite the construction cost of taking like the Belvedere or any of these old casinos and convert those into residential units, that's a tough go, because most of the downtown product that was built in the 80s. And the codes have changed so much. Life safety code and energy efficiency has changed so much since then to now. I worked on the 121 Vesta Street for years. I thought it was the perfect deal. The old Volkswagen dealership. Turn it into this great new thing. The guy who ended up doing it tore it down, was building an efficient multifamily in Midtown. I think he kept the elevator shaft. So that it was still a renovation, but he tore down most of what was there. So to answer your question now, but I think that's kind of.
Is there any other conversion that makes sense?
I mean, look, you know how Walmart made so much money is they used the Piggly Wiggly model. They only reordered whatever a customer bought. Demand pull is the basis of lean manufacturing concepts. Apply lean manufacturing concept to real estate, and what it tells you is listen to your occupier, listen to the person who's going to occupy your space. And if enough people say build it for me, look, we all meet wing nuts, but if enough smart people tell me something, I listen. If enough tenants in a row say I want this, I build that. So conversion, I mean, that's not a question. Yes, I mean there's conversions. I just don't do it in industrial anymore because I think all the good deals have been bought down. In 3 years, it might be time to put money back into that. Anybody got one last thing? I just want to thank you all for spending a couple hours with me. I only lost 2 or 3 to sleepiness. That's fine. Teaching for years taught me that. But I applaud you, right? I applaud you as fellow investors who invest your own money in this market and believe in it. It's actually people like us who make a community strong and grow. And if I can ever be of service to you, let me know.